On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being evenly divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed.
All right, y'all. It is official. As you just saw in that initial clip, President Trump, the GOP, they came together and got it done. And as you saw, the tie-breaking vote was, of course, our main man, J.D. Vance, who was waiting in the wings to hopefully get his spot to continue on the America First mission. And this is a great day for America. Now, in this video, we're going to go into what's in the bill. We're going to check out this article from Fox. But before I even get into that, let me show you some of the ridiculous stuff that they actually did at trying to pass this freaking bill, okay? Now, this right here, Chuck Schumer jumped up on the stage of the Senate, and he stood for 16 hours talking about this piece of legislation. He did it and was trying to be so critical because they were trying to sway the rhinos. They knew that we had some rhinos who were just going to go against Trump. Thomas Massie, Tom Tillis, Rand Paul. Those folks thought, and these are the Mitch McConnellites, who all thought that they were going to stop this progress. And we got to make sure we primary the heck out of them and get them out of there. And even Jim Thune, the GOP majority leader, you know what he did? He didn't have a spine and did not allow them to remove the 1.4 million illegals that were on the Medicaid rolls. And I understand he might have had to do that for appeasement, but why? The Democrats weren't going to vote for it anyway, unless there was a closet Republican that wanted that. And here's something else weird. They had what's called a parliamentarian. Now, this parliamentarian was not elected. As a matter of fact, this parliamentarian woman was inserted by Harry Reid in 2012. As a matter of fact, let me see if I could bring up who she is and let you see. Matter of fact, here we go right here. This woman right here, and as you can see here, let me enlarge this so you can check it out. You can see it. John Thune officially declines. Matter of fact, let me mute this. John Thune officially declines overruling or firing the Senate parliamentarian who was appointed by Democrat Harry Reid in 2012 after she strikes a dozen or more MAGA items from the big, beautiful bill. So this Democrat individual was able to nitpick and take out certain things of the big, beautiful bill. Luckily, some they held strong on, but Jim Thune, man, he is oh my God, but that's what we stuck with, right? Now, in this part where Chuck Schumer was on the floor, they needed to break down. Matter of fact, I won't even tell you what it is. I'm gonna let you listen to this BS and you tell me, can you believe that the United States government, politicians have gone this deep into the hole? Check this out.
For purposes of paragraph 3, the term female means an individual who naturally has, had, will have, or would have, but for a developmental or genetic anomaly or historical accident, the reproductive system that at some point produces, transports, and utilizes eggs for fertilization. 5, male. For purposes of paragraph 3, the term male means an individual who naturally has, had, will have, or would have, but for a developmental or genetic anomaly or historical accident, the reproductive system that at some point produces, transports, and utilizes sperm for fertilization. Sex 7111.
Can you believe that they literally had to stand there and define what a woman is, a man is, because the Democrats were acting like they just didn't know? So for the sake and purposes of this bill, they literally had to be broken down and explained on the Senate floor. That's how far gone this stuff has gotten. But luckily, we got the big, beautiful bill done. So let's dig into this. Senate passes Trump's, big, beautiful bill after marathon votorama. President Trump's $3.3 trillion budget bill advances with near total GOP unity, while Democrats warn of a nuclear option. Senate Republicans rallied to send President Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill back to the House, notching a major victory in their record-shattering march toward getting the legislation signed into law. Nearly every Republican in the upper chamber coalesced to advance Trump's $3.3 trillion mega bill, save for Senator Tom Tillis, RNC, Rand Paul, Republican, Tom Tillis from North Carolina, Republican, Rand Paul from Kentucky, Susan Collins, is there any shock there, from Maine. No Democrat crossed the aisle to support the bill at all. You mean tell me Lisa Murkowski out of Alaska supported it? Oh my God. Vice President J.D. Vance's tie-breaking vote was needed to push the bill across the finish line, unlike on Saturday, when the Ohio Republican descended on Capitol Hill in anticipation of a tight vote to proceed with the debate on the bill. That comes after Republican leadership tried to win over the votes of Collins and Senator Lisa Murkowski, the Republican from Alaska, with sweeteners in the final amended version of the bill. See, I knew it. Lisa Murkowski was on the no side. That woman, and she doesn't even have to be elected out there in Alaska. Theirs is weird. I would say vote her out. The bill now heads to the House, where fiscal hawks in the House Freedom Caucus are frustrated with what they say are shallow spending cuts, and moderates are concerned over cuts to Medicaid. All have warned that they may not support the bill. Senate Republican leaders have made clear that they intend to have the bill on Trump's desk by Friday. Many House Republicans, including Speaker Mike Johnson, a Republican from Louisiana, called on the Senate to change as little as possible. A product that could pass the House was front of mind for some Senate Republicans as the day dragged on. If you're enjoying this video, do me a solid, hit the thumbs up, because I will never ask you for a cash out or a super chat. I'm grateful that you're here. Your like helps spread the information out. And if you aren't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. And even if you are already subscribed, make sure that you hit your notification bell and select all, because YouTube hasn't been sending out the notifications. And I want to make sure you get notified when I upload new videos. We're talking to the House. Senator Markwayne Mullin, Republican out of Oklahoma, said, quote, "We know they're going to have some issues over there, just like we had some issues when it came over here too. But we think we're going to pass a bill that they can pass." House Ways and Means Chair Jason Smith, chief tax writer in the House, said he was optimistic about the bill on his way to the Senate floor Tuesday morning. We're moving to the point that we're getting more balance. And what I've said all along is, let's have balance in the bill, the Missouri Republican said. We're going to get this done. We're going to get this to the president by July 4th. Republicans pushed the chamber from the end of June to the beginning of July after a marathon weekend that saw high drama unfold on the Senate floor. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat out of New York, bled time, hours of mostly one-sided debate. The occasional protest in the Senate gallery, a grueling blast of amendments, and the penultimate vote to move the ball forward to the president's ambitious agenda. The blur from Monday to Tuesday, like the weekend slog before it, was not without its own dramatics. Senate Democrats tried numerous times to shelve the legislation during the vote-a-rama, while Republicans sought to revive certain measures that were scrapped, like provisions that would have booted illegal immigrants from Medicaid, or amendments to sate key Republican holdouts. And before sate? I'm not familiar with that. And before the bill was put on the floor for a final vote, last-minute deals were struck and changes made in a wraparound amendment to attract holdouts. Included was the doubling of the Rural Hospital Fund to $50 billion, which was pushed by Collins, and a rollback of the start date of Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, work requirements for states with higher payment error rates like Alaska. Lisa Murkowski, they had to sweeten it for her Alaskans, where the SNAP program work requirements would be prolonged. So in other words, in Alaska, her people can keep eating off the government SNAP programs without having to fulfill the work requirements. Trump's big, beautiful bill is crammed with his and congressional Republicans' legislative priorities, including billions for the Pentagon and to bolster the White House's border and immigration agenda, the permanent extensions of his 2017 tax cuts and Jobs Act, deep spending cuts, and an effort to reform Medicaid. Senate Republicans have pitched the bill as a way to both turbocharge the economy and as a means to prevent Trump's first-term tax cuts from expiring. And I'm right here. They have simultaneously used it as a vehicle to achieve deep spending cuts in the neighborhood of around $1.5 trillion. But Senate Democrats have railed against the package for the millions it could boot off Medicaid and the trillions it could add to the federal deficit. The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, CBO, released two sets of scores Saturday and Sunday that reflected both current policy and current law. Under current policy, the bill would tack on just over $507 billion over the next decade. Only $507 billion over the next decade. But under current law, the package would add roughly $3.3 trillion. Okay, so pay attention to what that is saying. Under current policy, the bill would tack on just over 507 billion, but under current law, the package would add roughly 3.3 trillion. Now I'm gonna come back to talk about that. Senate Majority Leader John Thune from South Dakota countered that when it came to spending, Senate Democrats were being hypocritical. I've been here, quote, I've been here a long time, Thune said, and I've not been involved in a single spending debate and fight in which Republicans were trying to spend less and Democrats were trying to spend more, with one exception. So in other words, it's always been the Democrats trying to spend more, not the Republicans. He's never seen it. So they're being hypocrites because they always want more. And that's national security, he continued. Democrats are always willing to cut defense, but never want to cut anywhere else. But Schumer accused Trump of lying about the bill, particularly over the nature of proposed cuts to Medicaid and the economic growth potential tied to the tax package. And in one final act of defiance ahead of the bill's final passage, Schumer had the official title of the legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, nixed. The American people will not forget what Republicans did in this chamber today, Schumer said. I agree, Chuck. Americans will always remember the day that the tax cuts became permanent, our border became more secure, and our Pentagon gets what it needs. And folks, understand something. The debt ceiling that President Trump asked for is not like he's looking to add that on. He's wise enough to know that typically they would do this in an increment. Then he would have to come back and ask Congress for an increase if need be. So what President Trump did is he took a worst case scenario based on himself, Scott Bessent, and every other economic expert that he has working with him and said, look, folks, at the worst case scenario, if this thing finds some slip ups here, what might we be looking at? And they said, well, here. And he said, you know what? I know how these Democrats act. And what if the midterms don't go the way Republicans plan? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll get every single thing I want and that I would need and that I would typically stretch out over 4 years. We're going to get it all in this one, because with this one, I don't really have to come back to Congress again, unless it's to ask for permission of us going into war or something like that. So don't fret, because the Democrats are taking the technical part of him asking for the debt ceiling to be increased without also explaining, because it wouldn't be beneficial to them to explain to people without explaining the fact or the reason why. Knowing if he had to come back to Congress, and let's just say the Democrats are in leadership, he would get stonewalled. Or let's just say the Republicans stay in power, but they lose a few seats. And you got to depend on people like Rand Paul, Thomas Massie, Tom Tillis, Susan Collins, or Lisa Murkowski for those Republican votes that you would need. You already know he's done. So in a very smart strategic move, he took worst case scenario, and God, that's why you keep hearing them. That's why he was so adamant about this bill, the big, beautiful bill, getting everything in it. So now when it comes to the Medicaid, you notice that Democrats never say that Americans are being pushed off Medicaid. You ever notice what they actually say? Matter of fact, I'm going to show you what they actually say. And bear with me, because I don't want you to throw up, and I definitely want you to stay here with me. But check out what Elizabeth Warren, and I just want you to hear this because it's proof positive of what I'm saying. They're very smart. These people know how to use the terminology. Now, notice how she explains, but she never says American. Check this out.
Okay, so the Republicans keep working on this bill, and it keeps changing, and it keeps getting worse. So the latest, based on what they've done, is that about 17 million people will lose their access.
17 million people.
To healthcare. And just so everybody understands about this, who we're talking about your cousin's baby that was born and ran up $1 million in medical debts before the little one even made it home the first time. We're talking about your neighbor who got hit by a bus and ended up in a wheelchair and needs a home health aide to be able to live in his home. And we're talking about your friend's grandma who outlived her savings and now counts on Medicaid to pay for her nursing home. So those are the folks we're talking about. And
now I want you to pay attention just how strategic she is. You notice she said, those are the folks we're talking about. Yeah, because you're talking right now. But those aren't the folks that are being kicked off Medicaid. The people being kicked off Medicaid, the millions, it's like 14 million illegal immigrants getting kicked off. And the other 3 million or so are able-bodied men and women who should have never been on it in the first place, or have stayed on it far longer than the program was set for. Let's just be clear. Medicaid was set up for somebody they need a year, couple years to get on your feet. Now, unless you've been injured, unless your husband or significant other passed away and you got a lot of children and you just can't, or if you're an elderly person, okay, I get that. But for the able-bodied people who generation after generation have been passing it down, they need to be booted off. So this lady is a liar, she's a charlatan, and she's a faker.
Those are the folks who, under this Republican bill, are going to lose their health care. And then just one more twist. Right now, on the version that we've seen, it's about $1.1 trillion pulled out of the healthcare system. So you know who else gets hurt? Is everybody.
I just can't listen to it no more. This lady is a bold-faced liar, and guess what? She just got smacked back. Look at that face. Look at that face. She is a psychopath, and she wears those glasses to make her look like she's smart. She's a woman who has lied. She lied about being Native American. She took scholarships from actual Native Americans, and she used that to get herself going. Even in the politics, she was running as a woman of color, even though, no disrespect, she looks absolutely 100% white to me. Not saying that there's not Native Americans who look white, not even saying there's not black people who look white. There are, but we know it's already been exposed. She is not Native American. And since the lamestream media and the Democrat Party try to sweep that under the rug, that's why Trump calls her Pocahontas. If you ever wonder why he refers to her as Pocahontas, that's why. But folks, we should be ecstatic, because the hardest hurdle, the highest hurdle to jump was going to be the Senate. But now that it has cleared the Senate, it goes back down to the House. It's going to the president's freaking desk. And by Friday, July the 4th, the big, beautiful bill will be completely done. But many never thought it was even going to get to this point. And if you live in one of those states, Alaska, Kentucky, North Carolina, do everything you can to spread the word to get Tom Tillis out of there, to get Rand Paul out of there. And a lot of people be wanting to support Thomas Massie. That dude don't give a dang. He acts like he's this person that's just so for all of this stuff. No, he's just like the Democrats. He's anti-Trump. And at one point, I was riding with Thomas Massie until I realized he's more loyal to Mitch than he is to you or I. Rand Paul more loyal to Mitch than he is to you and I. Remember, Rand Paul has a vendetta against Trump because he embarrassed him in the 2016 presidential election. Thomas Massie has an issue with Trump because he embarrassed Rand Paul and embarrassed Mitch McConnell and got him to resign. Well, health also helped with that, but it's a great day. So hopefully you see how great this information is. Fret, the fact that it's going the fact that it's going back to the House, it already voted and passed the House. Now it's only going back just for small little touches and whatnot, but it's a done deal, folks, and I'm ecstatic. And let's see what the lamestream media says about this. They are melting down, and Elon Musk is melting down. Elon, I always knew. Elon never sold me like he was a conservative. He is a liberal at heart, and I understand his frustration after the Doge work that they did. But what Elon has to understand, this is bigger, and Trump can't tell Elon everything. And because obviously, as you see, Elon has a short fuse and will jump on Twitter and expose anything private that was shared with him. So if people expect Elon knows the ins and outs, no, he doesn't. President Trump is smart. He keeps it close to the hip, and only those who need to know knows. So what Elon doesn't understand, he's kind of, they say he has Asperger's, maybe slightly autistic, to where he doesn't really function with regular emotions, allegedly, like you or I. His thing is, hey, you're spending too much. Why don't everybody just stop? Hey, the bill is this. Why don't we just do it? He doesn't understand that you have Republicans who want things selfishly for whoever their big money people are that are saying, hey, you better get this added. Screw the major constituents. Almost all of those have the big money group or hedge fund or whatever that's pulling their coattails saying, hey, man, we done bought you yachts. We done got your children in these great colleges. We got you those secret accounts set up over there in Switzerland. What you going to do for us? I'm not saying, I don't know if they really do, but you know what I'm saying. So I get it. Elon doesn't recognize that things have to be negotiated. So he doesn't get that part. But the biggest mistake he can make is by making an enemy of the most powerful man in the country. And it looks like that's what he's trying to do, because he said he's going to primary every Republican because the bill passed. What would he had rather? That it not? So what, Elon, you want the Democrats back in power? Man, it's crazy. But tell me what you think about it. Leave a comment. I'm ecstatic. I'm extremely happy about it. Hopefully you are too. Go Trump. He did it again. If you haven't already, do me a solid. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Like I said, leave a comment. But most importantly, I want you to stay safe and you be great. I'm Brian Maxwell saying I look forward to seeing you at the top. Over and out, y'all.